Here in Norway we have arrived at the threshold of winter now. The trees have been completely stripped by a storm that also took our power away for a few hours. And it's getting cold. Beautifully cold. November really is the darkest month of the year. And not just because the sun goes down early, but also because the snow is not yet here. And it can sometimes be a little bit hard to adjust to this new darkness that is suddenly over you. I've struggled a bit with this time of the year in my life. I often find myself becoming more and more sleepy, and then I often feel sort of uninspired, and this feeling of emptiness starts to grow inside me. I start to feel like all the days are very heavy and that it's kind of always darkness outside. But in the more recent years, I've started to realize that there are actually things I can do to kind of cope better with this time. And those include doing more stuff that I want to do outside in the daytime so that I get as much daylight as possible. And also to just accept that I am tired and that I am sleepy, and if possible, try to slow my life down a little bit. After we came back from our tour, I was working kind of hard to get into a good rhythm with my days, because I was kind of scared that the feeling of tiredness and lack of inspiration would stick with me, even though we were now back in our home. And often when I feel low, foraging is kind of my way to go. The hunt for wild edibles makes me go more outside, and it also reconnects me a lot with the season and nature, and definitely the present moment, which is often very much forgotten in my brain. But now in the winter it's sometimes a little bit harder to do that, because there aren't that many things that are growing. So I decided to start doing something that I have done a little bit in the past, but not as much as I would like, which is plant coloring. Plant coloring, or dyeing with plants, is something that people usually also do in the spring or the summer. But I was kind of curious if it was possible to find things to dye with now in the winter, so I started reading in my plant coloring book and also looking things up online. And the more I found, the more excited I got. Because here's the thing with plant coloring, it is sort of addictive. And I don't even knit, but still I got so addicted to this thing. but it's some sort of grounding, magical experience in a way. Standing over these pots and looking at these plants that often transform into like totally different colors than what they were before. And just discovering that even if nature looks a little bit pale and grey during this time, there is so much color hidden within it. When you're foraging to dye with plants, it's very important that you forage quite a lot of the thing that you need to color with. Otherwise, the color might not be strong enough. As always, that means that you need to be mindful of what you are foraging. So, is it a plant that doesn't really grow in abundance in your country? Then maybe you should rethink if you have to use that plant or if it's possible to do it with some other plant. In this case, spruce is a very good thing because it grows in large amounts here in Norway. Another tree that I also experimented with was the alder. And then I foraged the bark and also the small cones of the tree. Taking away the bark from a tree can damage the tree. So I found a tree that had fallen in the storm and I foraged the bark from that one. I recommend bringing a knife since using only your hands and this garden scissor took me quite a lot of time. When it comes to preparing the bark, there are a lot of different recipes out there. Some people say you should leave the bark in water for about a year before you color with it. I decided only to leave it in water for 24 hours since some of the recipes said you could do that. The cones I also left in water for a few days. After one night, the bark and the cones were already giving off quite a lot of color in the water. I've heard that you can make black color from this, so I got kind of excited. I boiled the bark for several hours and then I cooled it down and put the yarn in. And then I had it at a high temperature for a few more hours. I've read that the alder bark has mordants within its components, so you don't really need to add any, but I still boiled it in an iron pot to bring out the grey tones. This is the result, and I think it turned out pretty beautiful. It's still not black, but I'm thinking maybe if you leave the bark in the water for a year, you will have that color. And then I did the same thing with the cones, and I got a very different type of brown. And if by this point you're thinking, hello, could you please explain this a little bit more? Then I have made another video about plant coloring before that you can check out. I will link it down below. And also most of the recipes I use in this video are from a book that I am reading, and I will link that one below as well. And I encourage you to follow your intuition, actually, because I think this is a lot about intuition. An artist that I became friends with when I was in the mountains last November said something about working with textiles that kind of stuck with me. She was working on a big textile artwork with scrap fabric, stitchings and embroidery that was hanging from the ceiling like a wall. She said that working with textile is in a way a dialogue with women from the past. And that to some of them, embroidery and the pretty perfect stitches have been sort of a prison. In that sense, we kind of owe it to them, she said, not to be perfect in our workings with the textiles. And plant dye almost forces you to let go of control in that sense. Because the colors are after all made from nature and they are just as unpredictable. One of the things I tried to do was to color one of my woolen blankets red. And I used a root called Krapp that I bought online, and it's something that we have been using here in Norway, but it doesn't really grow wild here. And it gives out a very strong red color, as long as you can keep the temperature up. But it was really hard to keep the temperature on the blanket up since I didn't have a pot that was big enough, so I had to put it in this plastic box. And since it was so cold outside, the temperature really sunk really fast. After trying 3 times to color this blanket red and using shitloads of this root that I bought, I decided to call it quits because it was still pink. And I started using the color soup that I had been using and trying to dye some yarn instead. And then I finally got the results I wanted. So by this point I had 3 very different colors, but I didn't feel finished just yet. As some of you guys might remember, I foraged quite a lot this summer because I thought I might use that in our school tour. But in the end we actually have a lot of that left, especially St.Johns wort. And I decided I would try to use that now. St.Johns wort is already an amazing plant when it comes to herbal medicine. It's often used for sadness and light depressions. And as a color plant, it really surprised me. Okay, so now I am super excited to see what color the St.Johns wort is turning out to be. It's beautiful outside. Wow. So I just wanted to show you the difference between using an iron pot and then using a normal pot with maybe some alum mordant. So this is the St.Johns wort plant, and I used both the flowers and the stems and the leaves. And I used a normal pot and some alum. And then I used the very same plant to color the very same yarn, but just in an iron pot. And that's a very different color. Just like look at the difference between these two. So this is like gray purple-ish, while this is green. So it can be very different depending on what type of mordant you use. And also I think since in this pot I only used the stems and the leaves of the plant and I did not use the flowers, but earlier I colored some yarn in the iron pot with just the flowers and they were kind of purple, and I'm a little bit curious to look at them now and see if this one is very different from them, so I'm gonna go and fetch them. So here is the ones that I colored with the flowers, and they are like very purple. You can see this is purple. Wow, so look here, this one is kind of more brown, it's not really purple. So actually I got like 4 different colors from the same plant just by using different types of pots and also different parts of the plant. That's kind of cool. And now I am like kind of curious to put like a white yarn in the pot outside, because this one was gray, so I'm wondering if I put a white one, if it's gonna be yellow. Maybe we will see. So this is just one of those typical me situations. Have been making videos for like 2 years, and still when I go out to film I just always forget something important, and this time I actually forgot like many important things. And I missed the sunset, and I was actually going all the way up here to film with my drone. And I brought the drone, obviously, but I didn't bring the controller for the drone. I also forgot to charge the camera battery, so you will probably be out soon.